way of taking care of all parts of the body. The blood flows to the earth and to the plants, the animals, the fish, and the water. And we got to respect that.
The words of Chippewa Tribal Judge Fred Ackley reflect the feelings of many Anishinaabe elders. For them, showing respect for the earth through the way they live their lives is the way it should be. Referred to as Ojibwe or Chippewa by European settlers, the Anishinaabe, or First Peoples, settled around Lake Superior nearly 2,500 years ago. Here they thrived in harmony with the environment, living off the rich, renewable resources of the area, including deer, wild rice, and fish. They, along with all other beings, were part of the circle of life. But today, that circle is being threatened. Ackley is concerned that if we do not stop polluting the earth, the Anishinaabe will no longer be able to continue their way of life because poisons have entered the circle, affecting all parts: the waters, the plants, the animals, birds, and man. People have lost touch with the earth, their mother. Human activities have polluted every part of the ecosystem: the air, water, soil, plants, and animals. Pollution is made up of toxic contaminants that hurt human health. One of these is mercury. Mercury is naturally present in our environment in small amounts. But as the Great Lakes region's population grew and industry increased, along with it came an increase in the amount of mercury being released into the environment. In the 1930s and 1940s, mercury made its way into the environment through the use of agricultural fungicides and pesticides that contain mercury. Today, mercury is also released into the air when we burn garbage, when we produce electricity from coal, and when minerals are removed from the earth. Processing these minerals to extract metals such as copper, gold, and silver also adds mercury to the environment. Industrial pollution puts as much as 20,000 tons of mercury into the air each year, but it doesn't remain there. Although airborne mercury can drift great distances from its source, eventually it returns to the earth in rain, fog, or snow. In the last half-century, scientists discovered that when in water, mercury changes to a special form called methylmercury. When this change occurs, mercury becomes toxic or poisonous to humans. Methylmercury begins to move up through the food chain to humans when it is absorbed by small organisms in the water called plankton. The plankton are eaten by water insects called macroinvertebrates. The insects, in turn, are eaten by small fish. The small fish become food for the larger predatory fish. And finally, they are consumed by humans. At every step in this food chain, the mercury becomes more concentrated. Scientists call this process biomagnification. This means that the larger predators, like humans and eagles and some fish, accumulate high levels of mercury in their bodies. The toxicity of methylmercury is directed mainly at the brain, directed at the central nervous system. These neurological disturbances are many and include concentric constriction of the visual fields, which could progress to blindness, loss of hearing, unsteadiness of gait, loss of coordination, reflex changes, the loss of ability to speak, and the progressive intellectual deterioration in the more severe cases. The common clinical feature is paresthesias, which is tingling of the toes and fingers, mouth, and lips. This is extremely difficult to detect and evaluate in children. High levels of methylmercury can cause irreversible damage to the human nervous system. It wasn't until a tragedy in Japan that the world realized the danger of mercury. A large manufacturer dumped its mercury-contaminated waste into Minamata Bay in Japan for nearly 20 years. In the 1950s, the Japanese found dead fish washing up on shore. Animals such as pigs, dogs, and chickens died. And many people, too, showed signs of brain damage or developed numbness, slurred speech, deafness, and poor vision. By 1985, 2,600 people suffered the effects. 1/4 of them died. Methylmercury has also left a toxic legacy in Native American communities, in the Grassy Narrows and White Dog Indian reserves in northwest Quebec. Some tribal members had 40 to 150 times more mercury in their blood than the average Canadian. These levels far exceed those at which neurological damage is known to begin. The source of this pollution was traced to discharges from a pulp mill, which contaminated the fish in the river system that had been a major source of food for tribal members. Women of childbearing age are at the most risk of methylmercury poisoning. Methylmercury readily crosses the placenta. Studies have shown that fetal concentrations of methylmercury were 4 times more than the maternal concentrations. We should consider that the newborn brain is the most sensitive organ in terms of methylmercury toxicity. It is quite evident that heavy metal poisonings, which are the product of man's activity, are completely preventable. We should direct our efforts toward eradication of sources of these compounds in our children's environment and should aim at the reduction of present pollution levels. The amount of mercury that people collect and store in their bodies is known as body burden. Because of their larger size, adults are able to carry more mercury in their system before they are affected by it. Unborn children, the fetuses, are at most risk. In an effort to address the health concerns about consuming fish contaminated with mercury, the states of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Michigan all have fish consumption advisories. These health guides provide people with advice about which kinds of fish and how much fish are safe or unsafe to eat. These advisories are helpful, but they must be used with some caution. One problem with trying to develop a sound advisory is that mercury levels in fish vary from lake to lake and by the size and the species of fish. Some fish in one lake can be unsafe to eat, while those in another lake may be safe. And unless the lake where you fish has been tested, there is no way to know if the fish are safe to eat or not. Another problem is that scientists don't completely agree on how much mercury can be safely consumed. Advisory levels vary dramatically from state to state. How many meals of fish are eaten per month and how many ounces of fish are consumed in one meal are important factors that need to be considered when developing and interpreting fish consumption advice. Compared to the general public, many Anishinaabe eat more fish throughout the year, especially during and after various spawning seasons. So the state's fish consumption health guides may not be based on the right assumptions for tribal members and thus may not provide enough protection. The Anishinaabe are seriously concerned about the risk and health effects of eating mercury-contaminated fish. As a result of these concerns, many tribal members have had to change their traditional ways. Some people have avoided spearing certain lakes and only take the smaller size fish in other lakes. Now, despite these attempts to avoid contaminated fish, tribal biologists estimate that 8% of the walleye speared in 1993 had a mercury level high enough so that some limit on consumption was advisable. And some of these fish had mercury levels so high that none of them should have been eaten at all. Tribal scientists are doing their own studies on mercury. They are looking at existing information in new and different ways and passing it on to decision makers and tribal members. They are collecting fish from lakes that haven't been tested yet. They are looking at trends in mercury levels over time. They are looking at the difference in mercury levels between fish tested with the skin on compared to skin off samples. Some scientists are studying mercury levels present in hair and blood samples of tribal members. Science helps us understand the ways that mercury threatens the environment and human health. Scientists can also help to develop advisories that protect the people who face the greatest risk from mercury, and not just the general public. However, none of this makes the fish safe to eat. Preventing mercury from entering the environment is the only long-term solution.
I participated in all these negotiations with the state DNR, and we went to court over the treaty rights in court. To me, it was just like I wasn't really fighting for the fish. I was just fighting for the principle of it in court, because I knew that the fish were poisoned. Half of them were poisoned. Most of the lakes we fished on were mercury contaminated already. And we believe that other people should look at it, the corporations and governments. They're not really looking at that right now. How bad the mercury poisoning really is right now in our lakes and our fish. day we wake up, go to bed, we're in the circle of life. When you see the sun come up and the sun go down, you're in the circle of life. Mother Earth, she's alive, and that's what keeps all the life going. The circle of life. The world is one living round ball, and we're all part of that. As long as the Earth keeps spinning, we're the life force, the plants, the animals, and the human beings that keeps the Earth along with the energy spinning. And that's being part of the circle of life every day.